So what's my opinion on steroids? It's certainly become a very popular topic in the last few years at least. There has been two high-profile deaths relating to steroid abuse in the last 2 years. One of them was Rich Piana, who I followed here on YouTube quite closely. I thought he was a really interesting character who basically was fully open about his steroid use, and I've certainly learnt a lot from him because of that. But yeah, he passed away. I think it's 2 years now. They called it basically a heart attack, and the autopsy showed that the cause of his heart disease was steroid abuse. But there's been another fella who passed away also around his time. And he was like, an up-and-coming bodybuilder, and his autopsy also really revealed that he was suffering from steroid abuse-related illness. So, steroids have become mainstream, which is unfortunate. People are using steroids not only on the professional level, people that are getting paid millions of dollars. But people also, every day, Joe Blows walking down the street looking to fit, better into a t-shirt, they're using steroids. So it's far-reaching, it's very prevalent, and I think it's a topic that we should be discussing more and more, because I don't think these youngsters that they get on the gear, I don't think these people are fully informed. Certainly there's people that are informed, and they're taking everything into account, and they still choose to do the steroids. But I think there's a large portion of people that don't understand the effects of steroid abuse. So I want to tell you a story now, which I've kind of experienced bumping into somebody that was a steroid abuser, I guess. And that's at my workplace. So I work as a nurse in a large hospital, in emergency department there. And I remember this, it happened a couple of years ago, but I think it was a 22 or 23-year-old, early 20s, young fella came in with shortness of breath. And certainly this fella was very impressive. I mean, he was muscular as hell. He had muscles on top of muscles. He had, I don't even know what the muscle is, but he had this huge, massive muscle in between the shoulder and the pec. I don't know what that thing is, whether it's an anterior deltoid or what it is, but he was popping. And I remember speaking to him, and I was telling him, man, like, you're jacked as, and he wasn't in a happy place at that time, but he came in with shortness of breath, and later on we worked out that it was all related to his heart disease. So this young fella unfortunately abused steroids since the age of 18, so around 5 years of his life, and he went about it the wrong way. So basically this fella was using trenbolone acetate. Now, I'm not an expert on steroids, but I know enough to know that this is basically a top shelf steroid that people on the Olympia circuit basically use, and I can imagine that they get close medical attention and supervision when they're on this gear. And my understanding is that you're not supposed to take it year round. You're supposed to take it in cycles. Well, this fella basically said to me that he's basically been on it, the whole time. He hasn't had days off or months off or whatever. And so the effects of that was that he had extreme cardiomyopathy, which essentially means that the muscle of his heart was so enlarged that the heart itself as a pump was failing. And this moment in time that I met him, his left ventricle, basically his left ventricle was insufficiently pumping blood around his body, and that was causing all this fluid to accumulate around his lungs, called APO, acute pulmonary edema. So generally we see people, later in their life get this disease through just kind of wear and tear, and I guess, aging. But this guy was in his 20s. I have never seen anybody with APO at that young age until that moment, and it was very confronting to see this young man suffering. Later on, after looking after him and putting him on this, BiPAP mask, which is basically a pressurized mask, which aids to push that fluid out of the lungs and back into the circulatory system. So I had a bit of time to sort of chat to him and stuff, and he was telling me that he's always wanted to be a bodybuilder, and that's what he aspired to, and he got in the gear, and basically he was not intelligent enough to get off the gear when some of these health warnings popped up. But looking through his notes, I saw that he's had obviously multiple presentations relating to his illness with his heart, and there was an echo result there. Echo is basically an ultrasound of the heart, and what that showed was that his heart was pumping very poorly. So his ejection fraction was sitting around 20%. Now, the ejection fraction is basically a number to indicate how well the heart is pumping as a muscle. So usually it's around 60% of the blood that the heart can squeeze out per contraction. His was pumping at 20%, 15 to 20%, I think the number was, which is very poor. You see, this is basically end-stage cardiac disease, end-stage heart failure. This guy was 22, 23, and he's already basically got an 80-year-old heart. And so, it was so confronting to see that this guy was still using the gear despite being basically at death's door. And he was completely disregarding how serious the issues were, and he made a couple of comments like, how long is this going to take? I need to get home. I need to get out of here, blah blah blah. It's almost like he wasn't on the same page as we were. His mum was by his side, and the whole scenario was just weird. Like, if somebody told me that my heart was cooked, so I certainly wouldn't be taking steroids, but this guy was still using steroids, and also taking heart medications, diuretics, and all this other gear that he was on. So 22-year-old basically destroyed himself with 5 years of steroid abuse. Now, this is just one story that I wanted to share with you guys, that I've kind of experienced. And now, sure, like a lot of you guys are going to say, well, he's an idiot, like he's completely abused steroids. And to that, I'm going to say you're probably right. I think there is a good way of using steroids. You can take, much less doses, and I'm sure you're going to get, some benefit, and maybe a quarter of the risks. But you never know. You never know how your body's going to respond to this stuff. Which brings me to my point of this video, and that steroids for me have never been interesting for personal use, because I always looked at fitness and training, as a health thing. Health has to be number one for me. If this was detrimental to my health, I wouldn't be interested in training. Okay, so it's ironic to me to think that most people enter the gym to get into shape, to get better, to get healthier, and then the upper echelons of I guess fitness, I guess these bodybuilders and strength athletes who have taken fitness to an extreme level have now basically traded in their health card for this fitness. It's ironic, People come into the gym for fitness and then they're, unhealthy. So for me, steroids don't have a place in my life, and they never will. I've never been enticed to even try steroids, because I kind of understand the medical aspect of it. I'm not a steroid expert, but I kind of understand from a health point of view, being a nurse and being in the career for 10 years, I've seen, how fragile life is, and to think that some of these young guys get on the gear, thinking they just want to be jacked and do this stuff and not understand the risks involved in using this stuff is phenomenal. A lot of these guys don't have medical supervision when they're using this. They just kind of hear from a bro in the gym and they get on the gear and they think it's all good. And I've kind of watched a couple of YouTube videos of people kind of coming across as experts of this stuff, and they talk about, if you get this symptom, you got to take an estrogen blocker or this, that, the other. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, like, they're coming across like they're endocrinologists. Endocrinologists go to school for many years to understand everything, the complexity of the body. This guy, this bro who's used steroids, say, for 20 years, he feels as though he's an expert. not taking into consideration the body as a holistic system. You know, there's many things going on in the body, and you introducing a hormone, just one hormone, doesn't mean that all the other stuff is going to stay in balance. The body is very, very complex, and even doctors who have studied for 20 years don't understand everything. And these guys come across with such confidence that I'm guessing young guys sit on the other side of the screen and think, shit, I wanna get on this. Like, he knows what he's talking about, and I want to get on it. So it's scary stuff to me that people, number one, take drugs, period, but two, take drugs to such an extreme level, and just are so gullible. You know, that they have this trust about some of these guys in the gym they meet, and it's just, I can't understand it. Which points me to another aspect of all of this. I feel as though that the guys that get on the gear, for whatever reason, I don't know. I keep thinking that they have a mental health thing going on there. You know, what is it about steroids that makes you want to go there? You know, is it insecurities about yourself? Is it feeling, you know, low confidence? Do you want to fit in? Do you want to show people? Like, I just don't understand why you'd want to be just walking down the street being so jacked. Now, if there's money involved and you're a professional athlete at a top level, I can understand the motivation for you to kind of take steroids and cheat your way to a bigger paycheck. But for some of these guys going to the gym who are not sponsored, who are not representing anybody, like, why would you want to get on steroids just to be, you know, better looking in the shirt? And trading in your health bloody for just looking a little bit better and maybe picking up some chicks. To me, that's unfathomable. So that's one side of it. Like, you know, the whole professional thing and people have people having money around steroids. I can see where people can get sucked into this. You know, it's their, you know, family's livelihood, bigger contracts, more money, more opportunity. So money is an evil little thing. You know, people can kind of get swayed by money. But for people that don't have that aspect to it and just pump iron for the sake of pumping iron and just want to look good, those guys are the big question mark for me. Because what's influencing these guys to kind of take steroids? What is it? You know, other than just looking good. There's no other pressures on. So that points to me that it's something in their head. You know, they haven't developed as an individual, or they're trying to fill some hole that they have in themselves, and it's quite sad. The professional guys, like I said to you, like, I feel like there's a lot of different external factors involved in that. You know, I remember a baseball player, you know, back in the day, Bonds or something, whatever his name was, he was the first guy that I kind of heard about cheating using steroids in sports. And I thought to myself, like, you know, I can sort of understand him. Like, he wants to be the best. There's a lot of money involved and blah, blah, blah. This still doesn't make it right. But I kind of understand him more than I understand this guy, just an average guy in the gym. So my opinion is that I think you shouldn't trade your health in for anything. Health should be number one when it comes to training. You know, you have to be smart about these things. And I guess in my line of work, I see a lot of sickness, a lot of people passing away, people, you know, being unfortunately dealt crappy genes and whatnot. So I'm exposed to, you know, disease on a daily basis, whereas some of these guys have never seen somebody, I guess, in that position. So I value health greatly. And that's why for me it's a massive head scratcher for people. And especially now that steroids are really popular and in sort of in the mainstream, with Rich Piana's death. Like, he was basically, I guess on YouTube, the loudest voice when it comes to steroid safety, steroid abuse. And even Rich Piana had an opinion that young guys should never get on the gear. You know, he always said that you should kind of like max out your genetic potential and then get on the gear if you choose to. But he always kind of said not for 18-year-olds to use this stuff. So he had some really good messages there as well. And so now that he's passed away, unfortunately, we've got the autopsy result. You know, some of the stuff on there was really disturbing. You know, like in the report, it said that his heart was 3 times the size of a normal human being of his age. 3 times the size of the heart. his lungs were double to what a normal lung capacity should be, lung size should be. His liver was massive. His kidney, everything grows when you take an anabolic steroids. And I think also Rich Piana was abusing the shit out of it. Like, I mean, this guy was on, I'm guessing, massive doses. He was not just using, my understanding is he wasn't just using anabolic steroids, but he was using insulin, he was using growth factor hormones and all this sort of stuff. So he went, full Monty with this shit. So yeah, I mean, for any 18-year-old out there that's looking into using steroids, there's a prime example right there why you shouldn't use steroids. And for some people, they think, oh, a big heart is better, isn't it? Well, for I guess for laymen to think that a big heart, a big stronger muscle of the heart is a good thing, it's actually not a good thing, because when you have a bigger heart, there's more muscle there, and the blood vessels that feed that muscle are still the same size and the same amount of them. And so you're walking up the stairs trying to feed that heart muscle with blood that's now triple in size. I guess you can say that it's triple the fitness level, because you can't feed that muscle with such small blood vessels. So the anabolic steroids pump your muscles up, but they don't actually do anything else for the support of that muscle. So I once heard somebody say that obesity, whether it's muscle with muscle or with fat, obesity is obesity. It's still a big strain on your heart. And so, which is an interesting point, because you always think that muscle tissue is much more useful than fat tissue, right? But when you're such a big size, it doesn't really matter what it is, because it's still, the heart needs to pump so much blood around the system. And in the case of anabolic steroids, the heart muscle itself is grown, so that's more muscle that the heart needs to kind of feed. It's kind of like having a Toyota Corolla engine in a big semi-trailer. There's no way that thing is going to provide enough energy for such a big system. So don't be fooled by thinking, more muscle will do better everywhere. It's not like that. We're not supposed to be 160 kilos. We're not supposed to be so large. Our organs are not made to support that stuff. So yeah, that's my take on steroids. I think it's a very bad thing that it's so mainstream now. I think it's a good thing that we have some more knowledge, I guess, in the forefront of how much of a negative impact this stuff can have. And I just sincerely hope that young kids do more research into this stuff before they get on the gear. I know when you're 18 years old, you kind of want to impress, you want to be, world-class athlete, you want to break through, you want to have all the attention on you, you want to have the girls' attention and all that. But I just hope common sense prevails and young guys stay off it. It's really sad. As you guys probably already know, I've joined a gym, a big fancy gym now, and there's a lot of people walking through, and it seems as though 20% of these guys are on steroids. And you can see the guys who are taking steroids and not. Like, I'm not an expert, but you can see muscle tissue that's just unnatural, swollen, vascular, almost popping. Popping with swelling. That's unnatural, man. Like, I've had many pumps in my life, but to be pumped like that and to be so massive with such a small body fat percentage, it just screams to me that it's steroids. At the end of the day, I don't really care. Like, I honestly don't care. To me, it's all about health. I look at these guys and I'm like, yeah, but I'm healthier than them. I'm going to live longer. Where's the longevity in all this? People just don't give a fuck anymore. They just, whatever. Longevity is not an issue until I get there. 60 years old, that's so far down the track. Like, but things change. Your opinions will change, and some of this stuff is, you can't take it back. Once you've destroyed the body, that's it, man. Like, you're on your way out. So anyway, that's just my little rant about steroids. I hope you're not on them, and if you're on them, I hope you are having a medical doctor looking over you, and I hope you're having bloods taken regularly, and just take care of yourself. I wouldn't want to hear another Rich Piana story, I guess. But yeah, health has to be number one, guys, before anything. All this other shit is accessory. health is number one. If you're not healthy, you won't be able to go to the gym anyway. Anyway, guys, talk to you next time.